Castlevania is a series very near and dear to my heart. I love the classics, I adore the Metroidvanias, and hell, I'll even defend the 3D games. Okay, maybe not these, I don't really care about these. So when a young Guile Winquo opened up the August 2008 issue of Nintendo Power back in the day, and saw that a Castlevania fighting game was coming to the Wii, he lost his mind. Not only was this a dream come true as a Castlevania and fighting game fan, but it had brand new character designs done by Death Note artist Takeshi Obata, and it was also being developed by Aiding, the team behind Bloody Roar and the Naruto Clash of Ninja games. So I mean seriously, what else could a late 2000s weeb gamer want? Well, apparently much more. Cause when the fighting game Castlevania Judgment released just a few months later, I remember playing it a few times and then shelving it. Which is probably something a lot of people did, because there isn't too much discussion online about the game. Castlevania Judgment just seemed to be a regular old licensed arena fighter that didn't offer too much in player expression and mostly seemed like a vessel for random fan service. But as years go by, I feel like I was too harsh on the game. So, for Halloween I decided to look back at Judgment to see what its deal was, and try to find some deeper appreciation for it. Before we get into the gameplay, I guess I should cover what Castlevania Judgment is mostly discussed for nowadays. Takeshi Obata's art direction and brand new character designs. Castlevania has had tons of different art styles over the franchise's existence. From very western tabletop RPG pieces, to the absolutely gorgeous gothic Bishonen art from Ayami Kojima, to just generic old anime style. It's always been funny to me that the most divisive style has always been Obata's art for this random spin-off game. His spin on Castlevania's characters was definitely over the top and very different, transforming our macho manly hero Simon Belmont to this light Yagami lookalike twink in bondage. Maria became a magical girl, a cliché werewolf got donned in berserk-like armor, your typical rogue thief became a bandaged freak, and Alucard just became Sephiroth. I definitely understand that some of these are wild interpretations, but hey, Simon went from this to this already. So is this jump that crazy in hindsight? And Obata did crank out some amazing designs in my opinion, like the previously mentioned Cornell, or Shanoa's nun outfit, and even my favorite design for Trevor. I don't know, it definitely reeks of the over-designed style that we saw in many pieces of media at the time, and it's a bit tacky, but being 15 years removed from its release kinda makes it charming in my opinion, and at the end of the day, the game is just a what-if spin-off. And speaking of, yes, Judgment is of course a dream match type scenario, cause how else would you get characters spanning literal centuries of time to fight each other? Basically, this entity known as the Time Reaper is being sent back 10,000 years into the past to kill Dracula and destroy his timeline. Learning this, a mysterious time dude named Aeon decides to pull a bunch of Castlevania characters from a bunch of different timelines to try and find the one strong enough to kill the Time Reaper. This is all cool and dandy, but as a longtime Castlevania fan, I'm just here for the quirky interactions, like Simon wanting to beat his great-grandpa's ass, or Shanoa explaining that the Belmont clan is no more in her time, and this I guess...
They're huge.
Will you stop? These things only get in the way.
I guess I wanted this too. Yeah, no, not exactly what I was looking for if I'm being honest. And that's one of my biggest gripes with the game, is that these what-if scenarios don't really amount to anything cool. Since characters are plucked from different timelines, and I guess different universes, some characters who know each other canonically don't hear. So instead you get a bunch of, hey, I'm gonna fight you, I guess, type moments. But we'll talk more about the characters in a bit. For now, let's take a step back and refocus on the developer and then the actual gameplay of Castlevania Judgment. Like I said before, Aiding developed Bloody Roar and the Clash of Ninja games, two series that are still played and beloved today. But they were also the go-to licensed 3D fighter dev who pumped out game after game for many different properties and companies. But they also have big games under their belt, like, a little game called Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and most recently, DNF Duel. Aiding fans love Aiding because all of their fighting games have a loving dash of goofy jank in them that makes them just so charming and fun to play. So when revisiting Castlevania Judgment, I definitely had a preconceived notion of what I was about to get into, and if I'm being honest, Aiding being the developer of Judgment was a huge push for me for replaying the game cause I love everything else they put out, so I knew a young dumb Guile one quote waggling his Wiimote had to be missing the sauce that Judgment had to have. So, Castlevania Judgment is a one-on-one arena fighter that lets the player run around all over the place in every direction while fighting the opponent, collecting items and hearts, and avoiding stage hazards. The game has a super simple control scheme, you know, cause the game had the Wiimote in mind. Cause there's only one normal attack, and of course it's done by waggling the Wiimote. But let's not pretend that if you're touching this game anytime after 2009, you're probably using a controller. So there's one attack button that you press to do strings, and holding a direction gives you different strings. There's technically another attack button, but instead of pressing it to do attacks, you hold it down and press the main attack button to get different attacks. This of course is another holdover from the Wiimote, so you can hold down a button and waggle and get different attacks. Then of course there's the sub-weapon button, where you throw whatever item you equipped on the character select screen, or whichever one you picked up in battle. Yes, there are breakables with goodies throughout the stages, and it's the only way you'll find hearts that are ammo for your sub-weapons in a match. But there are also rapid shot upgrades that let you essentially throw sub-weapons faster, as well as other random sub-weapon boxes that switch your sub-weapon out, mostly to your detriment, that can also come out of breakables. There are 10 different sub-weapons in the game, and they're not all created equal, and each character only has access to a small number of them. There's the classic dagger, an axe, the cross, the stopwatch, a swarm of bats, a poisonous cloud, the gale force, a gravity circle, jagged rock shooting from the ground, and of course, the holy water. I saved the holy water for last because if your character can pick holy water, choose holy water, and avoid any other items like the plague. If your character can't pick holy water, then suffer. Kind of just kidding. But yeah, holy water is really ridiculous because it lets you set up dummy easy combos, but other sub-weapons do have some cool implications and utilities. And if you hold down the sub-weapon button, you can spend more hearts to do a bigger and badder version of each attack as well. Then there's the jump button, and a roll or dash that is done with the second analog that is unique to each character, and some characters can even get air dashes out of, and the guard button. There are no highs or lows in Judgment, so guarding is typically safe. But every character does have access to moves that break guards like big slams or literal grabs. Along with the fact that if you guard for too long, you'll eventually get guard broken, which can happen often as characters have access to easy routes that do a bunch of guard damage. And when your guard breaks, it takes a chunk of your meter away. Meter is of course used for your overly drawn out super anime cutscene attacks. So when you combine all of this together, honestly at first it just seems super basic. Most of the time you're just going into predetermined strings that can't really flow into each other, and even comboing into super seems hard or impossible. But there is more than meets the eye. So Judgment has a deliberate attack cancel system, where normal attacks can be cancelled into charge attacks or sub-weapons, and charge attacks can be cancelled into sub-weapons. Mix this in with jump cancelling from normal or charge attacks, and you honestly have some really cool combos, granted you have the right sub-weapon. Which is why Holy Water is just so strong, because it gives you good juggles and easy combos into super, and even infinites if you have enough hearts. But yeah, some characters have some really cool and surprisingly technical combos, so let's finally take a look at the characters. Judgment has 15 playable characters, with Simon and Trevor being our Belmont representatives. They're both super strong whip dudes with cool combos and good options at close and mid ranges. Easy to pick up and easy to win with. Always a good combo. Then there's Alucard, and man, at least for me, he's the most disappointing character in the game. He could have had a crazy moveset, but he's a bit boring and doesn't have many interesting tools to me. I'd love to be wrong, but I just wanted more from such an iconic character, and if I'm being honest, I'm not a fan of his design. Next we have Grant, and like I've mentioned, he probably has the most bonkers redesign. He's a super annoying and slippery zoner just like he should be. And I mean, check it out, if you hold down his projectile knife throw long enough, you could just shoot a million knives that guard break. He also has access to the easiest infinite in the game. But the caveat is you actually gotta hit someone with a slow jab first. To finish off the Castlevania 3 characters, we have Sypha, who is honestly so sick in this game because she has some of the most fun moves and combos in her kit. She legit feels like an anime character, and her execution just feels so cool. Speaking of anime characters, next we have Maria, who is now the annoying magical girl who zones you by flying around and throwing a bunch of stuff out. I honestly feel like she has one of the highest ceilings in the game, with some strong options and mix-ups because her guard break is the Guardian Knuckle, which calls out a little spirit that attacks in conjunction with Maria so she can knock you down, call it out, and try to mix you up. Carmilla is also in this game, and she's got a very succubus-like design for some reason, but she also has crazy air combos. She's definitely one of the flashiest in the game, and also one of the most fun because sometimes she just feels like an action game character. The badass Lancer Eric is just a tiny boy in Judgment, and that's probably a good thing because this character is bonkers, so I can't imagine a grown man Eric in this game. His normals are crazy, he has some of the most efficient and damaging holy water loops, and he has a unique hop out of guard that lets him jump attack safely, and his jump attacks are super strong and can lead into full combos. Eric is just super strong, but really fun. Cornell's just a super cool rushdown character. His main gimmick is that he has an install that just speeds him up like crazy and lets him teleport and attack you from all over the place. I'm just super happy we got a 64 rep, and he has one of the best designs in this game too. Shanoa is also here, and thankfully a lot of her glyph attacks from her game are represented, and she's a pretty faithful and fun character. Judgment only came out a month after Order of Ecclesia, so it's cool to see a DS era representative, and honestly, I think the Shanoa design has done more for marketing this game than anything else has. Our only real monster character is Golem, who seems to be an amalgamation of Castlevania's multiple Frankenstein monsters enemies. He's obviously the big, slow, heavy hitter who might seem bad at first, but has some shenanigans with his rolls that can be a scrub destroyer. Next is Death, and man, I honestly really love this design. I really get the weird Shinigami feeling from it. His moveset is honestly whatever to me though, sadly, but he's still decently fun to play as. And then there's the big boy himself, Dracula, and he sucks. His moveset and everything is actually pretty faithful to the games, but that doesn't translate very well to a fighter. He's a slow zoner who just has to eat stuff up close. And then finally we have the Judgment OC Time Wizard Aeon, and he's alright. I'm not the biggest fan of his design, but he's got some interesting combos, because his gimmick is that he has access to different attacks depending what time his clock is reading. And you know, shooting a giant laser is always going to be fun. Honestly, this is a pretty strong cast, but a big detriment to the game is that Castlevania has way too many amazing characters that aren't here. I mean, no Richter? No Soma? No matter what, people are going to be disappointed, but these are the two that stood out for me the most. But beyond that, there are also 10 different stages that vary greatly, because all the stages are different sizes, some have ring outs, some have different elevations and height, and some even have hazards and gimmicks, which can thankfully be turned off, but honestly I kinda want to make the argument that playing with them is more fun in this game, and it's funny. The different stage sizes of course make some characters better on some and worse on others, but also make spatial awareness super important. Not only to be at your best range, and away from ring outs and whatnot, but also to keep away from traps and bad items. Nothing sweeter than stripping someone away from their precious holy water by hitting them into an item box. Something you might have noticed is that sadly, Judgment does run at 30 frames per second, which is a huge no-no in the fighting game genre, and this isn't helped by the fact that some stages kinda chug the frame rate more than others. And other times, the camera itself doesn't know what to do and flips out. But thankfully I was able to learn to love the game regardless, and partially due to its faults. Castlevania Judgment is a simple game, but like I've said a million times before, a fighting game doesn't need to be in the next Evo to deserve some love. And in fact, Judgment's simplicity is probably its strongest card up its sleeve. It's super easy to pick up, and doing some of the more complicated stuff will take a bit of practice, but feels very natural and self-explanatory once you get a hold of the game's systems. So it's a perfect game to just bring to a random local and lab with some friends for a night. But even if you're just messing with the game by yourself, it's still got some cool stuff, like the story modes having stages where you're fighting zombies and giant monsters before taking on the Time Reaper, who is just so huge and just feels like an action game boss. And there's also the Castle mode, which is a mission mode for each character that has you perform specific tasks that award you with costume accessories to make your characters look goofy on completion. And I also can't do this video without mentioning how good the soundtrack is. Judgment's renditions of Castlevania classics are honestly some of the series' best. And I just think the aesthetic of this game in general is pretty good, especially for the Wii. So all in all, I'm glad I came back and revisited Judgment, because honestly looking back, I think it gets too much of a bad rap. I understand that at the time, the people wanted a main series Castlevania game where you go through Dracula's castle and fling the whip with your Wiimote to slay monsters. And this is definitely not that. But, the game is old as hell now and easily accessible, and just a lot of simple fun. The gameplay and the characters definitely grew on me as I kept learning the game. And I got to play some fun versus matches with friends who had an easy time picking the game up as well. And after posting about this game, I have seen that there are some other Judgment lovers out there spreading the message of this game's coolness. So I hope to see more dumb Eric combos, and hopefully even some tourneys run for this game at some point. So, hope to see you grab a Wiimote and start waggling soon. Thanks!